We have over 16,000 students in over 100 academic programs, including 13 doctoral programs. We're a research university. We're classified as a doctoral, high-activity research institution, and our primary mission is to provide outstanding research and education in a comprehensive set of academic disciplines, and also to provide excellence in healthcare. Virtually half the university is involved in healthcare. We have all the academic programs in the health sciences, plus 2 hospitals, a cancer center, and numerous health clinics. We're also very proud of the Office of Undergraduate Research here at the University of South Alabama that's headed up by Dr. Jack Shelley Tremblay. I'm sure you've benefited from his enthusiasm during the meeting. He's doing a great job running that center, and we've started a number of new programs associated with that office in the last few years, including a new student organization for undergraduate research, a new student-led journal, the Journal of Undergraduate Research and Creative Activities, and we continue to expand our summer undergraduate research experience program for undergraduates here at the university. We have 60 participants in paid research experience every summer who benefit from mentoring by one of our top-notch faculty, and those students and those faculty do amazing work, and it's more and more amazing every year what they're able to accomplish, and we're very proud of all of them. And we're very excited to host this annual meeting, and we're especially pleased always to host Dr. E.O. Wilson back in his hometown. We've benefited from him visiting with us many times over the years, and it's great to have him back. It's a special privilege to host such a great scientist and also such a gracious and warm person back here in his hometown. And to the Academy, I thank you for your good work in advocating the value of science and its method. This is very important work, more important every year when these days it seems like even basic facts are in dispute. It's great to support an organization committed to reason and evidence. And thank you for bringing your annual meeting to South Alabama and Mobile during Mardi Gras season. I hope you survive Mardi Gras safely. And hope you have a great experience here at South Alabama. Welcome.
Listen up, young scientists. Just a tip before I start. Always bring a backup. Just got my notes and the front page is missing, but fortunately I have a backup. Okay, good evening. My name is Tom Meyer. I'm an assistant professor of nursing at this great university. My collegiate career began with pursuit of a degree in biology way back in the 60s. There was one building on this campus, one building. I was a naturalist to the core, and I had been since I was a kid, and I still am. And by that I mean I was both naturalist and a kid still. So being a nurse is my vocation, my profession. I'm proud and privileged to have touched many lives in my passionate pursuit of that vocation. A vocation now. But I won't do nursing anymore when I retire. But being a naturalist is my lifelong avocation, a passion, and I'll do that till I die. Back in the 60s, we didn't have much in the way of superheroes for naturalists. A lot of people didn't even know what a naturalist were. The modern environmental movement was still in its infancy. Sure, we had great naturalists, but none seemed heroic to me. Then in the late 70s, I began to hear about a naturalist who was shaking up the world of biology in a real big way. Harvard was about to fire him. He was audacious enough to have posited that humans were subject to all laws of nature and that humans do not enjoy some special exemption from natural laws. Back in that days, that didn't endear him to the religious and academic authorities around the nation. Then he won a Pulitzer Prize, okay? And they kind of had to back off. He established an entirely new discipline in biology. And then he won another Pulitzer Prize. And he became the leading theorist of population biology and even coined the concept, the word biodiversity, one we throw around like we've always had it, as the key to the well-being of life on Earth. These days, there are few who will dispute his view of the natural world. There's some. He's got his vocal critics. To be sure, there have been many great biologists in the past century. Each was a hero, is a hero in his own right. There are some of them in this room. But among the great, there are precious few who deserve to be called a giant. Ed Wilson is a giant worthy of respect as a superhero. Since that's sort of in the modern vernacular now, let's take it to another level. It seems that when my new superhero was a youngster, right here in Mobile, in what has become the Oakley Garden District, he became the first person to scientifically document the presence of the fire ant in North America. He was working on a Boy Scout merit badge or something, I think. This led to a scholarship at the University of Alabama. Now, I don't fault him for that, okay? After all, this great university where we now meet was not even a figment of anybody's imagination. So I give you a break on going to Alabama. Having excelled at Alabama, he went on and up to an upcoming university, a place called Harvard. He eventually became faculty there. Drawing on the inspiration of that discovery of the fire ants in North America, he became the world's leading authority on ants, a uniquely social organism. From this study of the social behavior of ants, he developed concepts that describe the genetic basis of social behavior, in the process revealing an entirely new branch of biology, sociobiology. He could have stopped there and still be known as a giant in the field, but no, that's not in Ed Wilson's DNA. Let me just summarize some of his achievements from stats from his CV. You'll get the point. It's been 61 years since he received a PhD from Harvard. He has taught and done research there for 6 decades. He has been the major professor for 28 PhD students at Harvard. He's received some 45 awards in science, among them the National Medal of Science, the National Geographic Society's Hubble Award, and a TED Award. For you nerds out there, he invented the Encyclopedia of Life, getting a TED Award for it. He's received some 28 major awards and letters for his writing, among them 2 Pulitzer Prizes. He's been awarded a staggering 75 environmental awards. There's too many of them for me to even try to list them, to mention. He is a member and fellow of dozens of scientific and philosophical and literature societies. He holds 41, count them, honorary doctorate degrees. He's written 433 articles and 32 books. On a personal note, some of his most endearing qualities include his wickedly wry sense of humor. I call it almost impish. His humility, above all. His intellectual generosity. He is willing to share. Sit down and talk with him sometime and you'll see what I mean. And his unerring sense of what it is to be a true gentleman. Honestly, if I enumerated all of his accomplishments, we'd never get to hear him speak. So it is my greatest pleasure and personal honor to introduce my friend, my hero, and soon to be yours, the greatest biologist of our time, Dr. E.O. Wilson.
Over the top, man.
Thank you.
Over the top. Okay. You know, it really is a great honor to be with you. And it's a special honor for me for multiple reasons to be invited to this academy. Yeah, I do. My family goes all the way back to near the beginning of Alabama, especially in Mobile. And I lived the formative part of my life as a student in Alabama. I'm telling you that because it was Alabama that gave me and the wonderful people I've known here that has gave me the impetus to go on and do my best in research and teaching of biology. This is a very special state, and I mean it. It's special, and the people who are in it are special. So much so that I consider Alabama and Mobile in particular my home. When asked about it, my 65 years of servitude at Harvard, what exactly how I characterize myself, and I say, I am not a Harvard professor who was born and raised in Alabama. I am an Alabamian who went up north to get work. So I keep coming back. And now I can say to you, as especially those who have accomplished your scientific career in this state, and those of you who are looking forward to making a career from this state, and then in many cases going on to the rest of the world to share what you learn and achieve, this is the right kind of a place to be from and to start a career or continue a scientific career. This is, to start with, for example, the aquatic state. That's what I've called it in 2 addresses I've made to the Alabama Academy of Honor in Montgomery. Aquatic state, think about it. The great Tennessee River system, the great Alabama river system, the bay, the Gulf, pouring into the Gulf. And it goes for saying, without saying, that this resource needs scientists to succor it, to help develop and protect it. And I'm proud, after meeting recently with the new president of the University of Alabama, that is Dr. Bell, to find that he has stated that what he would like to have as his legacy would be to have Alabama lead the country, if not the world, in the study of the qualities of water, of the management of water resources, and to help Alabama come prominent in this part of science and technology and management that should be rightfully is its to lead. On the campus of the University of Alabama, and I'm not a propagandist for my university when I say it, we have the National Center for Water Management Databases. And we also have, and Auburn is coming up fast with its own institution, the Alabama Natural History Museum. And that leads me immediately to point out to you that Alabama has the most forms of life in freshwater and brackish water of any part of North America. Alabama leads in biodiversity, aquatic and terrestrial. And a lot of that biodiversity is concentrated right here in South Alabama. And I believe that growing up, crossing that causeway on my bicycle and going as deep as I could into the Delta, I developed an appreciation of biodiversity and the richness that has made it come to be called the Amazon, America's Amazon. That's great. We have a great opportunity for our students And of course, for scientists who want to go into the areas of environment especially, or continue in the areas of biodiversity and the physical environment as well, that this is the place to be, to pioneer in major areas of environmental science. And that is what I'm going to speak to now, especially with reference to the living part of the environment. And I'm going to give you an account which I just gave 3 days ago as in the principal address to the National Museum of Natural History, the Smithsonian Institution, which was held on the environmental issues connected with biodiversity. And I'm making points to you that I made to them. So I want to tell you that it isn't just my undying loyalty to the state, but cold reasoning about where leadership should be. I'll begin with a brief introduction of biodiversity as the living part of the earth, the immensity of its size, its majesty, and little we know about biodiversity. My aim then to be briefly, in much time, share with you a radical view of nature, a new definition of wildlife, so that you won't be thinking exclusively of birds and mammals, and above all, how little we know about it. We live on a little-known planet. And then I'm going to give you an updated report on recent research on the deterioration condition of biodiversity worldwide and what we can do to bring that deterioration to a halt, and why we must bring it in to a halt. Climate change we can reverse, but extinction really, really is forever. There are 3 levels of biodiversity to keep in mind. There are the ecosystems, like ponds, forest patches, coral reefs, and so on, ecosystems. There are, at the next level, species. And then at the base level, there are the genes that prescribe the traits of the species that make up the ecosystems. Each species has been uniquely adapted to its environment by natural selection. Each interacts in a characteristic manner with other members of its ecosystem. The evolution and geographical history of individual species can be traced. We have the methodology to do that now. And in most cases, its present status can be assessed with relative ease and exactitude. How many species are there? There are slightly more than 2 million species known. But that is the ones that are known, and most of those are known only slightly, I might add, given a scientific name, a Latinized name, and a brief description so that they can be told maybe from other species. The actual number, however, of species on the planet is not close to 2 million. It is close to 10 million. In other words, we probably know, science probably knows only 20% roughly of the species on this planet. This planet, again, to repeat, is little known. We're just beginning to explore its biodiversity. And if you want to find new species and new kinds of ecosystems, just go right over to the delta there, and then go on out into the bay, and then go on out through the pass and along the barrier island. And then, if you prefer to be on dry land all the time, then head to the Red Hills north of the delta, where you will find remnant forests at the bottom of the deep ravines that were left over from the retreat of the last continental glacier. And if that was something that doesn't entirely suit you, and you want to stay, you'd like to be terrestrial, you don't want to deal with the massive water systems we have, proceed on to the last of the Appalachian Mountains in the north and come upon a different fauna. And if, for example, you are impressed by the diversity of the plants, and it's immense, and you have heard that the largest number of oak species are found in the southern Appalachian Mountains. 14 species found in just the southern Appalachians. I would call your attention to the number of species of oak that you can find in the Red Hills of Alabama, just a short distance from here, is 24. That you will, when you would like to go fishing and seining to see how many fish you can find, 354 species from our fresh and brackish water, the maximum in all of North America, and so on. So why am I telling you all this? For the moment, I want to stay with species and why they count, and why species should be the focus for great science of the future. So let me continue. Species are the basic units. Ecosystems, you might think, well, that's the thing to study if you're going to study biodiversity or save it. Well, of course, they're important. But ecosystems, in contrast, are mostly subjective in classification. They change a lot more rapidly than do the species composing them. The species come and go. The genes of the constituent species on which the Smithsonian Institution appears to be mesmerized right for the moment, is the genes, of course, is the most fundamental level. And their reading is a powerful tool for scoring and measuring biodiversity within a species. By all means, let us have genomics. And everything that goes with genomics is part of science. That's a frontier all in its own. But I want to continue my attention on an even greater challenge for the immediate future, where really great advances can be made in science. And I'll come to that shortly. Most biological research requires intimate knowledge of species. That's why I'm going to stay focused on them, especially the genetically determined phenotypic traits, which you, the majority of biologists here, I am, of course, speaking to the biologists primarily, study at any level are these biological traits, and you must be able to focus on a particular species and then think about where the species came from, what its history is, all the aspects of its life cycle, how it interacts with other species, in order to get the complete background you need in order to thoroughly understand whatever process it is that you are investigating. The identity of a particular mitochondrial DNA segment, or even an entire genome by itself, tells us very little then about what most biologists are interested in one way or the other, and about the anatomy, physiology, or behavior of the organisms, and even less about the role among other species in that part of the ecosystem to which it belongs. The rate at which major natural ecosystems are disappearing tells us a lot about the damage to the living environment, but the rate of species extinction tells us even more, and with greater precision. What then is the status of Earth's maybe 10 million species? And what has been the achievement of those trying to save them, the global conservation movement? The number of surviving species, as I mentioned, that we've been able to map is a little over 2 million. But the actual number is closer to 10 million. And let me just give you a sense of what that biodiversity is revealing as we begin to uncover it. Let me take, for example, the nematodes, the roundworms. Inconspicuous. Most people haven't even thought about it if they've even ever seen a roundworm. But they're the most abundant animals on Earth. It has been said that nematodes are so abundant that if you were to remove all solid matter from the Earth's surface, then you would still see a great deal of it in shadow, sort of in form of it, in the nematode, that is, take everything away except for the nematode. You would be able to see the shadow of everything in the nematodes left behind. Bacteria. This is a true frontier, just exploring the prokaryotes, the bacteria and the archaea. We have scarcely begun to study the variety of them and find the ways to find them. Our bacteria we know to abound in the atmosphere, clouds in the atmosphere. An ecosystem, are they multiplying and thriving on nutrients raised by upcurrents of the air? Maybe they are. We don't know yet. There are, in addition, the bacteria of the sea that include forms that are so ultramicroscopic they've only recently been discovered. Prochlorococcus is bacteria, ultramicroscopic. You can't see it with ordinary microscopy. The most abundant known organisms in the world, responsible for the bulk of photosynthesis of the sea. Discovered in, I believe, 1983, just beginning to be studied. And that, they pale besides the bacterial phages, which turn out to probably be, if we call them organisms, the most abundant organisms in the sea, if not everywhere. And these bacteriophages, we know in part, are predators of the bacteria, the photosynthetic bacteria. This is the world going on that's maintaining us that we were scarcely even unaware of until a few decades ago. And that's just the beginning. Recently discovered are eukaryotes, that is, organisms that have membranous nuclear membranes that have the basic mitochondria and so on, packed into an ultramicroscopic form, the picozoa. We don't even know what they feed on, probably as predators. We don't know anything about the picozoa because they're ultramicroscopic. It's only been within the last several years that this group of organisms, which may be exceedingly abundant, even exist, and we gave it the new name of the phylum Picozoa. And that's just the beginning, because if you go through the surface of the Earth, and you go past a meter or so, and then you go on down for upwards of a kilometer or more, you have immense masses of bacteria, not clumps, but spattered, and nonetheless collectively matching the photosynthetic matter on the surface. And these bacteria, they don't need photosynthesis. It turns out that they eat rocks. They reduce sulfates. They produce energy underneath the ground, deep. And we've only begun to discover them at the bottoms of gold mines in South Africa and places like that. If the world were to be destroyed by our master species, then burned over into a cinder, they would survive. And maybe after another 3.5 billion years, that's how long it took to produce us, maybe after another 3.5 billion years they would emerge and evolve and prove something like eukaryotes, again, multicellular organisms and societies, and then hominoid forms, and start the ugly cycle all over again. But I now am getting beyond myself. At the present time, science is to work on classification, and now I want to start emphasizing the immense importance of making a census of the world, of finding out what is in the world. We have scarcely begun this activity. And what I'm going to call, what I'm going to suggest is what I like to call the Linnaean Renaissance. That is the return of taxonomy, this hunting for all of the life forms of the earth, studying them with all of the modern technology, yes, of course, but basically returning it to what Linnaeus started so long ago, and finish our study of what's on this planet with us. At the present time, to show you how far behind we are, approximately 18,000 new species are discovered and given a scientific name and a little brief description, two-part scientific name. 18,000, and if we continue at that pace of exploring the world, exploring the unknown living world, then we will finish mapping the world sometime in the 23rd century. Let me repeat, 23rd century. Half of it will be gone then, because the rate of extinction right now of species is so great, and it's accelerating, that it would be lucky if it's unabated, remains unabated, we'd be lucky to have half of the living species still with us by the end of the century. And how fast then are these species going extinct? We can measure that. And they are going extinct at well over 100 times the present rate, approaching 1,000 by orders of magnitude before the coming of humanity. That's accelerating too. And next, we ask how successful have been all of the conservation efforts at staunching the loss of species. That's a major industry, a major effort worldwide, the global conservation movement. It is maintained and improved constantly by magnificent conservation organizations from local to global. The people are very hard working, trying to find out new ways to save species and so on. I know about their sweat and their blood and their tears in trying to save the world's biodiversity, because I've been on the board of almost all of them. The big global organization, you know, Conservation International and World Wildlife Fund and so on. So we have to ask, how well have they been doing? Among terrestrial and freshwater vertebrates, birds, mammals, reptiles, fish, and amphibians, where we can make exact counts. These are the best known of the animals. About 20% of the species classified as endangered to some extent. That is to say, in the red list of going from vulnerable to on down to endangered to critically endangered. That's the red list. 20% of the species within those groups, and there are about 1/5 of the species of those groups of animals that are on that red list. But 20% of that by all the global efforts that we have made, only 20% have been halted in the slide toward extinction. We're in the position of a surgeon treating an accident victim, in which the surgeon, with all the best technology and the best of nurses, Tom, have achieved that. And we can say 20% staunching of the hemorrhage. Congratulations, the patient will be dead by morning. And that's the position we're in right now. There are two parallel and equal, now I've got to tell you how how to do it. Forgive me for being presumptuous. There are now two parallel and equally important solutions to the extinction crisis. What we must do. The first logical step is to increase dramatically those parts of the world that can be put aside as reserve. Because habitat destruction is by far the primary destroyer of biodiversity worldwide. Species extinction can best be blunted by the expansion of nature reserves, that is, places where people can continue to live. Property rights can be still observed. Indigenous people can be helped, actually, by this. If the protected areas of the world now at 15% of the land protected all around the world, and roughly 3% of the sea, if those were raised to 1/2 both land and sea, then the global extinction rate of species would be lowered by approximately 80% or possibly more, 80% toward below the pre-human level. If we could do that, we would have a solution. That's what I have called the half-Earth solution. And I'm happy to tell you that at major conferences held recently in Honolulu, including the quadrennial meeting of the global conservation movements and of the summit, East-West Summit Conference on Sustainability between China and the U.S., that solution met with acclamation. That is to say, we saw that this actually could be done. It's practicable. And what on earth, how on earth did I arrive at that figure? Well, it's from that theory of island biogeography. We have a pretty close idea now of how many species can be maintained in a reserve or anywhere in perpetuity, or for the length of the lifespan of a normal lifespan of a species, is related to the area, such that you have a declining curve, steadily declining second derivative, and if you just add a little bit of new reserves to a group of species of the area of a particular reserve, you get a steep incline in the number of species you save. And if you keep on going and you come on around to, finally it goes like this, you come on around to half of the reserves, or half of the world, as I'd like it to be, saved, well then you're now at 80%. If we could get to 80%, then we could rest a little bit. And the reason why that's been so far, with very little critique, welcomed by the conservation community, just that simple idea, is that it's a goal. Whereas we been working all along to save this species, to save that rainforest, to sow this and so on. And they were doing everything possible. Nonetheless, that's a series of processes moving toward a not very exactly defined goal. We just want to save as much as we possibly could. But this is a goal. This says, do this, and you will achieve what you want, or something very close to it. It's rather similar to, I think the impact is similar to John Kennedy's selling space or landing on the moon to the American people. He did not say, by the end of this decade, we will be making great progress toward putting a man on the moon. He said, by the end of this decade, we will put a man on the moon and bring him back. And that electrified the country. And they went for that space program, and we got the man on the moon. And that's what the spirit in which we have to do this. Now, the second avenue towards saving the living environment, the species, if you wish to use that, as you know, the pivot, the way I do. It's to have save it long term, and is equally important in the end, is this need to revitalize classification and exploration of ecosystems everywhere. And the description and classification of species, to get on with it, to get to the bottom, to make a complete census, to learn as much as we can about the scientific natural history of each of these species. And then we can start in our pictures of the Earth to piece together an account of how the species are doing within the reserves and why certain approaches are better than others, and back and forth from genes to species to ecosystems. The latter needed to create competent disciplines of community ecology and conservation scientists. We need to know thoroughly what biodiversity still exists at the species level, especially where it exists, in order to save it. Right now, as I'm emphasizing, the databases are woefully incomplete. This can be done, and right now what I'm doing is sort of speaking to the young people here and those of you who are training young scientists in the universities and your organizations. And I'm not saying, well, keep them out of physics and chemistry. What I'm doing is saying, for those prone to go into biology, consider this as an extraordinary, promising, and important alternative to get them back into the field, to get back into scientific natural history, and to find out how to save the rest of life on this. I then would like to propose that and mention, of course, that taxonomy and scientific natural history, the study of species and all around them and of ecosystems faded in the golden age brilliance of molecular biology and the disciplines sprung around molecular biology, and full speed ahead for them. May they be multiplied in support and go faster and faster to greater and greater height. But unfortunately, it led to the decline of ecology and of our studies of Earth's biodiversity, its origin, its meaning, its maintenance, and everything else. Ecologist, taxonomists, and conservation biologists, then, I am proposing to you should be a much more important part of the training of scientists, of the making of careers for scientists, and also in our expectations of what they are going to produce for us. And then I want to emphasize about something real big that's over the horizon coming. And you probably haven't recognized it yet. But if you were looking for the kind of golden age, fast forward, brilliant new ideas in biology, then look to the ecosystems. Ecosystems we haven't even begun to think about in truly scientific fashions. We haven't even imagined how to handle these systems. And I'm going to make the claim that ecosystems that have evolved on this earth are the most complex systems we know in the universe, the human brain not accepting. And there is where how these species fit together, how their life cycles interlace, how species going rare or extinct affect the entire complex of these systems around the world that have evolved over 3.5 billion years. We haven't got a clue, except little bits of data and trends we see here and there. This, I'm convinced, is going to be, for the challenge, the intellectual challenge, and the importance it is. After all, the living environment is important too, not just the physical environment. This is going to be the next big thing. And I say that with a sense of feeling. I call it the Renaissance, Linnaean Renaissance. I do it with feeling, talking to my fellow Alabamians, because Alabama especially has provided you with one of the best laboratories in the world, with that amazing array of habitats containing the largest number of species, as I mentioned, to be found anywhere in this country. And there is no better way to get young people, I mean very young people, started and interested in science, and it turns out to be that it's going to be real science, where, you know, that's how you start improving and moving that science forward, to take them in the field and give them some empowerment of helping out with the kind of research just coming from field work and searching. Anyway, the technology is to do it faster and faster, beginning with us. That's what the genomics conference in the Smithsonian a few days ago was all about. And we can do it if we want to, and if we recognize the opportunities of great research that lie, as I said, just beyond the horizon, and we catch it when it comes. And Alabama, I should like to say, is the best one of the best natural laboratories in the world, the totality of our environments here. The consequences of not doing this, of not meeting this kind of challenge, is going to be profound. Even if you are interested in only the physical basis of the environment on which we live, for the agriculture, for the maintenance of water management, whatever it is that you're particularly interested, bear in mind that exploration then of what the matters of what we call the microenvironment in sections a meter or less across, where the major innovations in environmental science are going to be made, depend on a knowledge of all of the species that live within it. You can't get away with doing this kind of analysis without knowing what's happening to the living diversity within it. So I then would like to anoint, if possible, and join others in anointing my native state in being one of the great places to do this kind of science. And I'd like to close then a kind of scientific benediction. I realize I'm beginning to sound a little bit like a Southern Baptist minister. However, what I've said is serious, and after all, I did grow up, in that environment. But please hold with me, and believe that what I'm telling you is analyzable. Everything I've just said is analyzable as part of the body of scientific knowledge that we've accumulated up to this part, including what we do not know. And but I'd like to read from my book, Half Earth, something approaching a benediction. And this is the last paragraph of Half Earth. We should forever bear in mind that the beautiful world that our species inherited took the biosphere 3.5 billion years to build. The intricacy of the species we know only in part, and the way they work together to create a sustainable balance we have only recently begun to grasp. Like it or not, and prepared or not, we are the minds and the stewards of the living world. Our own future depends upon that understanding. We have come a very long way through the barbaric period in which we still live. And now I believe we've learned enough to adopt a transcendent moral precept concerning the rest of life. It is easy to say as follows: do no farther harm to the biosphere. Thank you, my colleagues.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wilson, for a very comprehensive message on biodiversity and ways that to save the rest of life, and also a good message on how to proceed on a great and important challenge to us all. I have the distinct privilege this evening to really make the presentations of awards at this banquet. The first award that I would like to present is the Wright A. Gardner